Saw dudes, Garuda Prime is one of the frames that doesn't get talked about all too often, but I'm here to change that. Despite not being too popular, she is one of the best nuke frames to play and has a lot of great things going for her. She can literally be unkillable, apply slash procs to a room full of enemies, and have infinite energy. As a bonus, she is eye candy and has great fashion options, which we all know is the true endgame. This bloody butcheress will make your spine tingle. Let's get started. Before we cover the build Bloodbath, we should probably go over Garuda's abilities. If you are familiar with her gruesome killing methods and affinity for blood, feel free to skip to the build sections. Garuda's passive causes her to gain up to 100% additional damage bonus for her abilities and weapons for each kill or assisted kill. The damage bonus increases by 5% per kill. After not killing for 5 seconds, the damage bonus decays by 1% per 2 seconds. Garuda also has a second passive, which allows her to use her talons as melee weapons when she does not have another melee weapon equipped. The talons themselves are extremely strong weapons, so if you do not have a good melee weapon at the moment, then just don't equip one and use hers. Her first ability is Dread Mirror, which has 2 parts. On cast, Garuda expends 25 energy to leap into the air to pounce at an enemy within 30 meters, staggering all enemies within an 8-meter radius on landing, while violently slashing the victim with her talons to inflict knockdown. The victim is instantly killed if its health is at or below 40% when Dread Mirror is cast. This ability cannot be cast on enemies with overguard and requires sufficient space for Garuda to land next to her target. Garuda is invulnerable while casting the ability. After striking a victim, the second half of the ability comes into play. Garuda rips her target's life force out to conjure a dread mirror in front of her for 20 seconds. The mirror is a hovering, invulnerable frontal shield that reorients itself to face the camera's direction. All incoming enemy ranged and melee attacks are blocked by the mirror on contact, while the damage is absorbed into the dread heart beating above the mirror's frame. While the dread heart is floating above Garuda, holding down the ability button causes her to grasp the heart in her talons and drain 50 energy per second to continuously increase the absorbed damage by 100% of the currently stored damage value per second. Releasing the ability button or running out of energy causes Garuda to throw the heart as a high velocity explosive projectile toward the location of the aiming reticle. The heart bursts on impact with an enemy or a surface to inflict the amplified damage as impact with a 100% stats chance and a 10-meter radius. The explosion damage does not have damage fall off. Blood Altar is Garuda's second ability, causing her to expend 50 energy to charge to a target within 30 meters, staggering all enemies within an 8-meter radius upon reaching her target, then slashing it with a spiraling uppercut that impales the victim upon an altar of talons for 20 seconds. While impaled, the enemy is completely disabled as it stays suspended above the altar helplessly, becomes invulnerable to incoming damage, and bleeds profusely, emitting an aura with an 8-meter radius. When Garuda or her allies stand within the aura, blood flows from the victim to them, restoring 25% of their missing health per second while draining 1% of the maximum health per second from the victim. Pressing the ability button while aiming at an enemy impaled by Blood Altar will release the victim early before the duration expires. Damage from outside sources inflicted on the victim while it was invulnerable will be dealt in full when it is released, and all status effects it received will resume their effects. Garuda's third ability is Bloodletting. On cast, Garuda slashes herself with her talons while spinning up into the air, sacrificing up to 50% of her maximum health to cleanse all status effects and restore up to 40% of her maximum energy capacity. Garuda cannot reduce her health below 2 health points while using Bloodletting. This ability can be cast if Garuda has less than 50% of her max HP, but the energy will still be proportionally restored. Garuda's final ability is Seeking Talons. Casting the ability will cause Garuda to expend 100 energy to begin a channel. During this time, her talons will fly around her, spanning a 2-meter radius. Enemies pierced by Garuda's talons will receive 300 slash damage and be pushed away from Garuda. Channeling the talons expands a focus ring indicating the range area of effect of the ability. The initial field of view is 25 degrees, which can expand up to 95 degrees when fully charged. The range of the ability can expand up to 60 meters based on the charge time. Upon release, Garuda unleashes 8 flying talons as homing projectiles, piercing through all enemies who are within the focus ring and in line of sight. During the channel, Garuda is completely invulnerable. Enemies damaged by the flying talons are marked with Garuda symbol for 10 seconds. Attacking marked enemies with weapons and abilities grants a 75% chance to cause a slash status effect. Time to go over the bloody game loop. On mission start, activate Bloodletting once to fill up your energy bar and prepare for ability casts. As soon as you see an enemy, activate Dread Mirror to summon the frontal shield and charge the Dreadheart. Next, immediately cast Blood Altar to recover the health cost from Bloodletting. Continue using Dread Mirror on enemies, and prioritize using it on enemies below 40% HP for the execute. Once you see a crowd, cast Seeking Talons to make them vulnerable to slash procs. Finally, hold Dread Mirror's cast to grasp the Dreadheart and throw it at the crowd. Recast Bloodletting and Blood Altar as needed, then rinse and repeat. This Garuda Prime video features 2 main build variants. Both variants work well with the Helminth ability, so the choice is up to you. The first variant uses one augment mod, and is generally the more new player friendly variant. For all builds, our aura mod will be Brief Respite. This mod will allow us to refresh our shield gate timer with one cast of Seeking Talons, giving us much more safety. Power Drift will increase our ability strength and provide some knockdown protection. However, if you're feeling a bit unsure, you can always swap this out for Prime Sure-Footed. Prime Continuity provides much needed ability duration, increasing the duration of the Dread Mirror shield and the mark put on enemies from Seeking Talons. Prime Flow increases energy reserves for easier spamming and can let us channel the Dreadheart for longer for even higher damage. Stretch and Overextended drastically increase ability range, though Overextended does hit our ability strength fairly hard. The extra range is great for Dread Mirror's nuke, Blood Alter's heal radius, and Seeking Talons AoE aura when considering the Blending Talons augment. Umbral Intensify and Transient Fortitude increase ability strength, increasing the damage from the Dreadheart, the healing from Blood Altar, and maximizing the slash status chance from Seeking Talons. Catalyzing Shields works with Brief Respite to refresh our shield gate to 1.33 seconds once our shields are fully restored. We can easily achieve this by casting Blood Altar or Seeking Talons once. Finally, we have our Augment mod, Blending Talons. This augment causes tapping the ability key to release a 9-meter AoE effect around Garuda. In addition, Garuda's talents gain 100% additional combo count chance when hitting enemies affected by slash status. The AoE does scale with our ability strength, so with our current build we have a 21-meter radius, which is more than enough to prime a room for Dreadheart nuking. Additionally, the combo count chance is amazing for talent spam if that's the route you would wish to take. The second setup is very similar to the first, but has space for 2 augments instead of only 1. The biggest change is swapping out Transient Fortitude for an additional augment of your choice. This setup loses a lot of ability strength, which can be a hindrance. This can be made up with Arcanes and Archon shards, as we will discuss later. The 2 augment options are Dreadward and Bloodforge. Dreadward makes Garuda unkillable for 8 seconds after executing an enemy with Dreadmirror. The operative word is unkillable, not invulnerable. Garuda will still take damage, but her health will not drop to 0. The duration of the pseudo-immortality scales with our ability duration, and with the current build, we're looking at 12.4 seconds. This augment is great if you struggle with survivability issues, but it can be a little annoying to keep up at times. Keep in mind that further activations will refresh the duration of the effect, but not stack it. Your other option is Bloodforge, which causes Garuda to reload 100% of her equipped weapons magazine upon casting Bloodletting. While this doesn't seem to do an awful lot, it's still useful on certain weapons. Guns that reload rounds individually or have an egregious reload time are great candidates for this mod's use. Tenet Arcaplasmor, Kuvazar, Felarx, Trumna, and Tenet Plinks are good examples of such. Of course, we have to cover Garuda's talents. Garuda's talents are pretty great melee weapons, but like exalted weapons, they are unable to use arcanes. Keep this in mind when you are evaluating your loadout. The stance I usually run is Vermilion Storm, since the spinning attacks cover a large area and make spamming easier. The other stances, Four Riders and Malicious Raptor, are also pretty decent, so it's just a matter of preference. For the Exila slot, I chose to use Dreamer's Wrath for the extra crit damage on Tennokai attacks, though you could even use the basic mod Mentor's Legacy. Condition Overload provides more damage through priming, and Primed Reach increases ease of use for crowd killing. Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds scale crit chance and status chance respectively as the combo count climbs. Prime Fury increases attack speed, but can be swapped out for Berserker Fury if you prefer. Organ Shatter increases crit damage. Galvanized Steel increases our crit chance to 73.5% and increases crit damage on kill. Galvanized Elementalist increases status damage and increases status chance on kill. Essentially, this build boils down to a hybrid heavy attack setup meant to kill via slash procs. Garuda's talents are incredibly strong, even without arcanes, so try them out if you need a melee alternative. Garuda Prime is a frame that works super well without a Helminth ability. However, having one opens up many gameplay possibilities and can be a fun way to experiment. If you choose to use a Helminth ability, I would subsume over Blood Altar as other sources of healing are available. The abilities I would subsume onto Garuda Prime are Banish, Breach Surge, Gloom, and Reeve. Banish is a very niche choice. Garuda's talents fall in a weird range of semi-exalted weapons and abilities, meaning they can strike enemies through the rift. However, enemies inside the rift plane cannot strike Garuda, so she has free reign to kill them without much hassle. Seeking Talents still affects enemies through the rift, so slash procs are still here to stay. I would caution using this ability since Eximus units are unaffected, so they can still burst you down in the real world. Breach Surge adds to the ad clear and nuking ability of Garuda's kit. The crowd control it provides is great, but the sparks are the real star. After using Seeking Talents, you can cast Breach Surge to put out an endless supply of sparks. Since enemies are still suffering from slash procs, they will set off a chain reaction of self-propagating sparks. This combo works even better if you apply corrosive status to armored enemies, since it will bypass some of the damage reduction. Gloom is the direct upgrade to Blood Altar. The aura that comes from this ability grants you lifesteal and a radial slow. The heal can proc off of Seeking Talons, which allows you to spam bloodletting for truly infinite energy. The slow is quite nice as well, since it can keep enemies in place long enough for a full nuke rotation. Finally, we have Reeve. Reeve offers % health-based damage, which can be useful if you plan to use the Dread Ward augment. Using this ability also heals you based on how many enemies you hit, so it can still allow us to sustain our energy loop. To increase the damage and get enemies closer to the 40% execute threshold, try using a viral primer. The arcane options for Garuda focus on increasing her already insane damage, but can be tailored to your playstyle. The ones I have tested and enjoyed the most are Arcane Arachne, Avenger, Ice Storm, and Molt Augmented. Arcane Arachne is a straightforward damage buff and one that can be activated every 30 seconds, assuming you remember to. The buff affects everything, but most importantly affects the thrown Dreadheart. This can make nukes super effective, but the wall latching may become annoying. Arcane Avenger is nice on Garuda since it can make the Dreadheart crit. Critical stats are not listed, but the damage increase speaks for itself. I find that this arcane is much easier to run than Arachne and usually benefits most weapon I run. Plus, with the playstyle Garuda has, there is no need to run combat discipline. Arcane Ice Storm is great for providing ability strength and duration in one package. However, Garuda does not have a way to proc it with her abilities, so you will have to outsource the cold stacks from weapons. If you are using weapons like Tenet Glaxion or Epitaph Prime, this can be a great option. Molt Augmented is a solid choice for increasing Garuda's damage in long form missions. However, it does take 250 kills to stack up, and it won't give you immediate effects. Still though, the extra 60% ability strength does allow other Helminth abilities to shine more. Personally, I run a combination of Arcane Avenger and Molt Augmented. The extra crit chance combined with ability strength is great. Avenger increases my weapon's damage output significantly, while also offering benefits to Dreadmir's nuke. Molt Augmented increases the nuke damage again, but also helps increase the slow from Gloom, my preferred Helminth ability to run. As for focus schools, Madurai is the only one you should truly consider. Power Transfer's 50% bonus to casting speed is damn near mandatory on Garuda when a situation turns south. Dreadmir, Bloodletting, and Seeking Talons all have long, albeit beautiful animations, but that means you can get nuked in a second if you're not careful. Cutting down the nuke rotation time is great in higher levels, since you can safely execute it and get back to a safe position. Sling Strength's 40% ability strength buff is not a requirement, but it's still nice to have. The extra strength is mainly used to amplify Dreadmir's damage and damage conversion, but can also be useful for Helminth abilities should you choose to slot over Blood Altar. Void Strike and Void Fuel are purely bonuses for weapon damage and do not affect Garuda's abilities. That being said, they're pretty nice for self-revival should you go down in a mission. You will see much more use of these perks in content that requires operator damage, such as Void Cascade. Finally, Phoenix Talons do affect Garuda's talents, which is great naming by DE. Phoenix Talons increases physical damage and operator damage by 30%, which is quite nice for our hack and slash build. However, it does not increase our slash proc damage, so if you want to increase it further, you would likely have to squeeze in a Bane mod on your talent build, or call in your resident Rhino player for assistance. The Archon shard section is a little bit weird, and is made up of 4 Tauforge Crimson shards and 1 Tauforge Amber shard. The 4 Tauforge Crimson shards are attuned for ability strength, and drastically increase the damage of Dreadmir. However, I have them on to counteract our dual augment build, since we will be losing out on Transient Fortitude. Without Transient Fortitude, we would get some ability duration back, but we would also dip into the negatives for ability strength, which would be rough on Dreadmir, Blood Altar, or our Helminth ability of choice, and Seeking Talons. Even with Molt Augmented, it would take 250 kills to stack up, which would be a massive pain. These 4 shards, although ridiculous, help offset that. The Amber shard is there because Garuda's abilities take a long time to cast, and I'm impatient. As for other options, Violets are quite nice. Specifically, you can attune them for extra melee critical damage, which gets doubled due to Garuda's energy pool being over 500. If you have a melee-centric playstyle, or want to give the talents a bit more love, try this out. Finally, Emerald Archon shards are a decent choice. I would use 1 Tauforge Emerald shard to increase corrosive stacks on enemies, specifically for the Dreadmir nuke. If you have a primer that applies corrosive, this could drastically increase your damage with minimal investment. Now we have to cover the weapons. This section is based off of preference, so feel free to use what you like. Primaries that I enjoy using the most are Cedo and Tenet Archoplasmor. Cedo is just a monster with Garuda thanks to its Glaive alt fire. The Glaive does amazing AoE damage and primes enemies for the primary fire. However, the real magic happens when enemies are marked by Seeking Talons, causing the Glaive bounces to apply heavy slash damage over time in numerous other elemental statuses. Tenet Archoplasmor is a staple weapon in many players' arsenals and for good reason. However, it suffers from abysmal reload speed. This can be alleviated with the Bloodforge augment, which completely bypasses the reload mechanic, allowing you to sling plasma much faster without much of a hassle. The secondaries I love using are Epitaph Prime, Null Prime, and Prisma Angstrom Incarnate. Epitaph Prime is great for slowing down enemies and priming. More specifically, it can apply corrosive procs to enemies, allowing for the Dreadheart nuke to hit harder. Null Prime is a great single target weapon and pairs extremely well with Seeking Talons. The slash mark allows Null Prime to shred through any enemy up to level cap. Prisma Angstrom has the same general effect as Null Prime, but has multiplicative scaling with Gun CO. Also, the Incarnon perk allows bullets to ricochet between targets, which is especially useful for spreading slash procs once enemies are hit with Seeking Talons. Then we have melee weapons. The best I have tried are Glaive Prime and Kratos, though if you don't have any you like, I highly suggest using Garuda's Talons. Glaives benefit from Garuda's 100% bonus damage passive twice, so it's a double dip. This means your normal heavy attack build on Glaive Prime will be twice as strong. Now, you have two nuke options, the heavy attack Detonation and Dreadheart. Kratos has great movement perks, but otherwise it's just a good melee weapon. With Seeking Talons, it becomes even stronger at crowd clearing. Alright everyone, that is it for Garuda Prime. Now, some quick thoughts. I think Garuda should be on more people's radar. She has everything a newer player could want. She has an easy nuking loop, infinite healing, infinite energy regeneration, and great survivability. While she does rely on shield gating to make the most of her kit, her generous invulnerability frames make her gameplay much more forgiving. In a sense, I get reminded of Saren's Gunrunner setup, since Garuda can prime enemies for higher weapon damage. However, Garuda's Dreadmirror shield keeps her safe much more than Saren, leading to easier fights. All in all, she's a very solid frame, and if you are unsure about your next addition to your arsenal, definitely check her out. I hope this video helped, and let me know what you guys think. If you have any suggestions or thoughts, leave them in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming. Stay safe.